In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. The wind cut through the industrial outskirts of Chicago, rattling loose metal and carrying the smell of oil and rust through an abandoned shipping district where the city forgot itself. Inside a warehouse hidden behind stacked containers, a single bulb swung from the ceiling, its light scraping across cracked concrete and damp walls. 5 men sat around a scarred wooden table, their silhouettes hard and unmoving, like shapes carved from violence itself. Jack sat forward at the edge of his chair, broad shoulders tense, a skull tattoo climbing his neck like a warning sign no one ever ignored. His eyes were fixed on a map spread across the table, lines and symbols marking territory that once belonged to him. Each red line told a story of control, fear, and profit, and lately those lines were shrinking. He hated that more than anything. "They're killing our business," Jack said, his voice low and bitter. "Not with guns, with prayers." Across from him, Kane cracked his knuckles slowly, while Slim leaned back, calculating, always thinking in routes and logistics. Ghost stood near the wall, arms crossed, unreadable. Mickey, the youngest, said nothing. He rolled a silver coin between his fingers beneath the table, the soft clicking lost in the hum of the light. Jack jabbed a finger at the map. "That mosque on the south side. They open a center, talk kids out of drugs, talk families into hope, and suddenly we're the enemy. Not cops, not gangs, them." To Jack, it wasn't about belief. Faith was just another word people used to feel better about losing. This was about power slipping through his hands. "We can't burn it," Slim said. "They'll rebuild." Jack smiled, slow and cruel. "Exactly. So we don't touch the building. We touch what they believe is untouchable." He reached into his jacket and pulled out 5 passports, placing them neatly on the table. Then came brochures stolen from a local mosque, Umrah packages, smiling faces, white garments. For a moment, even the others were silent. "You're joking," Kane said. Jack shook his head. "We're going undercover. We convert." Laughter burst out, sharp and ugly, but Jack didn't join in. "We learn the moves, the words. We dress in white. We go where they think no evil can reach." Mickey swallowed, his fingers stilling. Something in his chest tightened, though he didn't know why. "They'll welcome us," Jack continued. 5 Americans looking for peace. And right in front of their most sacred place, we show the world there's nothing holy, nothing protected. The warehouse felt colder after that. The next morning, the men stood outside a green-roofed mosque tucked between brick apartments and corner stores. They looked different. No leather, no chains, flannel shirts pulled low to hide inked arms. Still, some tattoos refused to disappear, shadows of a life that never really left you. Inside, the air was calm, scented with wood and something sweet. An elderly imam sat reading near the wall, his white beard neat, his presence steady. This was Imam Hassan, the man Jack blamed for half his problems. Jack stepped forward and dropped to his knees. "We're lost," he said, voice shaking with practiced precision. "We're tired of violence. We want to change." Imam Hassan rose slowly and placed a hand on Jack's shoulder, warmth spreading through the fabric. "No one is beyond mercy," he said softly. "If your heart is sincere, the door is open." Behind Jack, Mickey felt something twist painfully in his chest. The lie tasted wrong here. Over the next weeks, the men returned again and again. They learned how to stand, how to bow, how to place their foreheads on the ground. Jack treated it like choreography, every movement rehearsed. Mickey listened more than he spoke. One evening, an imam spoke about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, about patience in the face of hatred, about answering cruelty with dignity. Jack smirked internally, but Mickey felt the words land somewhere deep, like they were aimed directly at him. At headquarters, Slim laid out the real plan. Modified bottles, a chemical that wouldn't explode but would stain, destroy fabric permanently. "We'll carry them during Umrah," he said. "Hidden." Kane laughed. "They'll pay for our tickets." Mickey didn't laugh. He had taken home a translated religious text given freely at the mosque. One line stayed with him, a reminder that nothing inside a person is truly hidden from God. At night, he felt watched not by police, but by something heavier. Departure day came fast. Hugs, prayers, smiles from people who believed in them. Jack smiled back, flawless. Inside his pocket, the ticket felt like a weapon. The plane lifted into the night, carrying hatred wrapped in clean intentions. Around them, other passengers whispered prayers, wiped tears, held hands. Jack closed his eyes, annoyed by the sound. When the announcement came to change into Ihram, the men took turns in the restroom. Jack stared at his reflection, tattoos exposed, wrapped now in white cloth. He grinned. War gear, he thought. Mickey didn't smile. Without symbols, without noise, he felt stripped bare. As the plane descended, voices filled the cabin, repeating God's name with quiet intensity. Jack mouthed the words, but each syllable felt heavy in his throat. The heat hit them as soon as the doors opened. The land felt different, dry, ancient, carrying a weight he couldn't name. On the bus to Mecca, Slim handed Jack a bag hidden beneath the cloth. Everything's ready. Jack nodded, confident. But as the city lights appeared on the horizon, something shifted. The massive towers of the Grand Mosque rose against the night, brilliant and overwhelming. Mickey stared, breath shallow. For the first time, Jack felt it too. A pressure, faint but undeniable. And the plan, so perfect in Chicago, suddenly felt very, very small. The bus rolled closer to the heart of Mecca, its windows framing a city alive with light and motion, yet wrapped in a calm Jack had never seen in any place of power. The road curved gently, and suddenly the Grand Mosque stood fully revealed, massive and luminous, its minarets piercing the night sky like silent sentinels. Conversation on the bus faded, not by command, but by instinct. They stepped down into a river of people dressed in white, flowing steadily toward the same destination. Jack adjusted the folds of his garment, his hand brushing the hidden bottle beneath the cloth, reassured by its familiar weight. Around him, strangers smiled, nodded, made space. No fear, no suspicion. That unsettled him more than hostility ever had. The courtyard of the mosque opened wide before them, marble floors cool beneath bare feet, reflecting the glow of massive chandeliers above. The air carried a mix of perfume, sweat, and something ancient, like history breathing. Jack signaled his group forward, his voice barely audible. Stay close. No mistakes. As they descended toward the central area, the Kaaba came into view. It stood simple and immense, draped in black fabric embroidered with gold, unmoving amid the endless motion of bodies circling it. Jack had seen it in photos 1,000 times, studied it like a target, memorized angles and distances. Seeing it in person was different. It didn't demand attention, commanded it. Jack's steps slowed without his permission. His chest tightened, as if the air itself had grown heavier. Keep moving, Kane muttered behind him. They merged into the current of people performing the circular walk. The rhythm was steady, almost hypnotic. Jack felt himself carried rather than walking, pulled by a force that had nothing to do with muscle or momentum. Faces passed him, old, young, broken, hopeful. Some wept openly. Others smiled through exhaustion. Why are they crying? Jack thought. What are they finding here? The chemical bottle pressed against his side, suddenly unfamiliar, like an object from another life. Mickey walked beside him, pale, eyes locked on the Kaaba. Each time the name of God rose from the crowd, it felt to him like a call he had ignored for years, now impossible to avoid. His knees trembled, and he focused on breathing, afraid he might collapse right there. As they reached a denser section of the crowd, a security officer approached, his expression calm. Jack tensed, fingers flexing instinctively. But the man simply smiled and gently guided them closer. You came from far away, the officer said in accented English. Welcome. May your journey be accepted. Jack nodded stiffly, stunned. He had planned to fight his way in, not be escorted by kindness. Now they were only steps from the wall. The scent grew stronger, clean, subtle, nothing like the chemicals Jack was used to. The black fabric loomed before him, close enough to touch. His heart hammered, not with excitement, but with something dangerously close to fear. "Third round," Jack whispered. "Now." He reached beneath the cloth. His fingers froze. The muscles in his hand refused to obey, stiff and useless. The bottle felt heavier than before, as if gravity itself had doubled. The crowd pressed forward, and suddenly Jack's palm made contact with the cloth of the Kaaba. The sensation shocked him. It wasn't physical in the way he expected. It was as if a current passed through him, igniting memories he had buried under years of violence. His mother's face flashed before him, tear-streaked, pleading. Then others, people hurt by his orders, lives broken by his deals. The noise of the crowd vanished. In its place was a silence that spoke louder than sound. "Jack!" Ghost hissed urgently. "Do it!" Jack couldn't move. An elderly man stood beside him, thin and frail, eyes clouded with blindness. The man reached out and touched Jack's tattooed hand, gripping it gently, as if recognizing something beneath the ink. "You are strong," the old man said softly. "Use that strength for what is right. You are missed." Jack's breath caught. The bottle burned in his grip like a live coal. Shame surged through him, sharp and unforgiving. He yanked his hand back and, in a sudden motion, hurled the bottle away toward a distant trash container, far from the sacred space. "What are you doing?" Slim whispered, panic rising. Jack turned, tears spilling freely now, his voice breaking. "We were wrong. This isn't something you fight." At that moment, the call to prayer echoed through the air, deep and commanding. The words rolled across the courtyard, and the entire crowd shifted, aligning themselves with effortless unity. No orders, no force, just obedience to a single call. Jack stood frozen as strangers gently guided him into a row. On his right, a man from Africa smiled. On his left, an Arab man adjusted Jack's stance without judgment. For the first time in his life, Jack felt accepted without conditions. As the prayer began, the recitation washed over him. He didn't understand the language, but the tone cut through his defenses, stripping away layers of arrogance. He thought of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, of stories he had heard about mercy stronger than revenge. When Jack lowered himself into prostration, his forehead touching the cool marble, everything collapsed. The lies, the anger, the pride, it all shattered. He sobbed openly, whispering apologies he had never spoken aloud before. Behind him, Mickey had already fallen to his knees, shaking with regret, tears soaking the white cloth. Kane fought it, fists clenched, but even his strength failed him. He trembled, realizing how small he truly was. When the prayer ended, Jack sat staring at the Kaaba, no longer as an enemy, but as a witness. He handed the last hidden bottle to a janitor with a quiet gesture. "You can leave," Jack said to his men softly. "But I'm not going back the same." No one moved. The journey that began with hatred had crossed a point of no return. The courtyard settled into a gentle hum after the prayer. Not silence, but something calmer, like the city itself was breathing. Jack remained seated, eyes fixed on the Kaaba, the black surface no longer intimidating but steady, grounding. The place that was supposed to be a stage for humiliation had become a mirror, and Jack didn't like what it had shown him. Yet he couldn't look away. People moved around them with quiet purpose, reforming circles, resuming their slow walk, helping one another without being asked. Mickey wiped his face with trembling hands, embarrassed but relieved, as if years of pressure had finally drained out through his tears. Kane stood stiffly, jaw clenched, fighting the urge to bolt, his instincts screaming that vulnerability was dangerous. Ghost leaned in close to Jack. "We need to leave," he whispered. "If anyone figures out who we are." Jack shook his head, eyes still forward. "Look at them," he said quietly. "No weapons, no fear, and they're stronger than we ever were." Ghost followed his gaze unwillingly. Families, old men, young women helping strangers stand. None of it made sense in the language of the streets. As they stood, a man approached them, middle-aged, calm-faced, carrying small bottles of water. He spoke English with ease and offered the bottles without hesitation. "Drink," he said gently. "It helps settle the heart." Jack hesitated, then accepted. The water was cool, clean, unlike anything he remembered. It felt grounding, as if it reached places deeper than thirst. The man sat beside them, not crowding, simply present. "I've seen that look before," the man said softly. "The look of someone who didn't come here by accident." Jack exhaled slowly. "We didn't," he admitted. "We came with the worst intentions you can imagine." The man nodded, unsurprised. "And yet you're still here." Mickey listened closely as Jack spoke about the warehouse, the plan, the bottles. He expected anger, maybe alarm. Instead, the man listened like a doctor hearing a confession, steady and focused. "People come here with clean hands and dirty hearts," the man said after a pause. "Others come with dirty hands and hearts already broken. Which one do you think can change faster?" Jack didn't answer. He already knew. That night, they didn't return to the hotel. They stayed near the mosque, sitting against cool marble pillars as waves of people continued through the hours. No one questioned them. No one asked for explanations. For men who had spent their lives guarding themselves, the absence of suspicion was unsettling. Mickey watched the sky shift slowly, stars fading as the first hints of morning crept in. He thought of his mother, of quiet nights and words he hadn't understood back then. It felt like the long road he'd run from home had curved back without warning. At dawn, they drank more water, then joined the flow moving toward the path between the two hills. The walk was steady, purposeful. Jack moved without command now, not leading, just participating. His shoulders were no longer squared for dominance but relaxed, like someone learning a new posture. As they walked, some pilgrims stared openly at the tattoos peeking from beneath the white cloth. A few stepped aside, cautious. Ghost bristled, old anger rising. "They still see us as monsters," he muttered. Jack stopped briefly, turning to him. "We were," he said simply. "Let them see the truth and decide for themselves." Ghost said nothing after that. By the time they finished the walk, exhaustion had set in, the honest kind that came from effort rather than chaos. Mickey collapsed onto the marble floor, sobbing again. Not from sadness this time, but release. Jack helped him up without a word, the gesture natural, unforced. Later, as the barber shaved Jack's head, clumps of hair fell away, joining the floor like discarded skins. Jack touched his bare scalp, feeling lighter, exposed, strangely free. One by one, the others followed. 5 bald, tattooed men stood quietly, no longer trying to look like anything at all. That afternoon, they returned for prayer again. This time, Jack didn't feel like an intruder. He felt small, yes, but not unwanted. As he lowered himself, he thought of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Of forgiveness given even when it wasn't deserved, of strength shown through restraint. Afterward, an American pilgrim approached cautiously. "Aren't you guys from Chicago?" he asked, wary. Jack met his eyes and nodded. "Same people," he said. "Different direction." The man hesitated, then shook Jack's hand. The tension melted in that simple exchange. As evening fell, they sat watching the sky turn deep purple above the mosque. Kane finally spoke, his voice low. "What happens when we go back?" Jack didn't answer immediately. He watched the Kaaba, steady and unmoving amid endless motion. "We shut it down," he said. "All of it. The warehouse becomes something else. Something useful." Slim nodded slowly. "That'll start a war." Jack's expression was calm. "Then we face it clean." Later that night, Ghost pulled out his phone, scrolling through old recordings. Mockery, threats, plans. Jack took the phone and deleted everything without ceremony. "That life ended here," he said. "We don't carry it forward." Before leaving the mosque, they performed a final walk, slower this time, deliberate. Jack brushed his fingers lightly against the stone pillar, committing the feeling to memory. As they stepped outside, Jack turned back once more. "Don't let me forget," he whispered quietly, unsure who he was speaking to. The night answered with silence and peace. The cold hit them the moment they stepped out of the taxi in Chicago, sharp and unforgiving. Nothing like the warm nights they had left behind. A thin layer of snow dusted the pavement outside the South Side Mosque, crunching under their boots as they stood there for a brief moment, silent, adjusting to a world that felt louder and harsher than before. Jack pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders. The skull tattoo on his neck was still there, dark and unmistakable, but it no longer felt like armor. Felt like history. Inside the mosque, the lights were softer than he remembered. Imam Hassan was organizing books near the wall when he looked up and froze. For a second, no one spoke. Then Jack stepped forward, lowered himself to the floor, and bowed deeply. Not in worship, but in humility. "We lied to you," Jack said, his voice unsteady. "We came to you with hatred in our hearts. We went to Mecca with the intention to destroy what you love." The room felt unbearably quiet. Mickey, Kane, Slim, and Ghost knelt behind him, their heads lowered. Jack told everything, the bottles, the plan, the moment it all collapsed in front of the Kaaba. He didn't soften the details. He didn't excuse himself. When he finished, Imam Hassan's eyes were wet with tears. Instead of anger, he pulled Jack up and wrapped him in a firm embrace. "God brings people home in ways we do not understand," the Imam said softly. "What matters is that you return changed." The next day, Jack stood once more in the warehouse where everything had begun. The same table, the same walls, but this time a copy of the Quran sat in the center, placed there with care. "The iron schools are finished," Jack announced to the remaining members who had gathered, some angry, some confused. "No more drugs, no more violence. This place is done being a factory for destruction." Shouts erupted. A few men stormed out, cursing him. Others stayed, watching Jack closely, trying to decide if this was weakness or something else. "We're turning this place into a rehabilitation center," Jack continued. "A place to help people get out of what trapped us." It wasn't easy. Rival gangs tested them, convinced Jack had gone soft. One night, a gun was pressed against Jack's forehead in an alley lit by flickering street lamps. "I'm not afraid," Jack said calmly. "I've already faced something greater than you." The man hesitated, lowered the gun, walked away. Slowly, the neighborhood changed. The warehouse doors opened each morning not for deals, but for people looking for help. Kane, once feared for his fists, now taught kids how to read. Slim organized schedules and supplies. Ghost stayed quiet but steady, watching over things without intimidation. Mickey's voice became a familiar sound in the area, calling people to prayer with a sincerity that surprised everyone who knew his past. Jack never forgot Mecca. In every prayer, he asked only one thing, that his heart would never harden again. He often thought of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, of how mercy had transformed enemies into allies, how forgiveness had proven stronger than force. One evening, snow falling gently outside, Jack stood alone in the mosque after everyone had left. He touched the cold floor where his forehead rested and whispered a promise, to stay upright in a city that constantly tried to pull him back down. He knew the struggle wasn't over. Faith hadn't erased consequences, but it had given him direction. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in its forgotten corners. The streets that once echoed with fear now heard something else. Hope, steady and unarmed. 5 men who had once come to insult God now stood as witnesses to mercy, guarding not a territory, but a way forward. And their journey, the most important one, had only just begun.